Hi, I'm Will Alexander, Maritime Autonomous Systems Lead at BMT. I'm joined today by Simon and Chloe, and we're here to talk about cybersecurity in maritime autonomous systems. Simon, Chloe, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hello, I'm Simon Brown. I'm BMT's Chief Engineer in Cyber Assurance.
Hi, I'm Chloe Yarrien. I'm our Maritime Autonomous Systems engineering lead, so I've got a bit of the operational point of view today.
So, Chloe, when it comes to security of operations, what are the differences that come with using uncrewed assets as opposed to traditional crewed assets?
So when you're thinking about using uncrewed assets, autonomous assets, you're wanting to get the benefits such as maybe cost efficiency. Maybe you're going to change your operations from using traditional crewed vessels to maybe more smaller assets that might use less fuel, be more fuel efficient. You might want to be taking the human off of the system, maybe to operate with higher endurance and persistence, or operate in more hostile environments. And so the first thing that comes to mind is that the human is sort of changing where they are. They're not on the vessel anymore. So whether that's them operating from a remote standpoint in like a remote operating center on sort of a shoreside place, or whether that's the system operating sort of completely autonomously with very little oversight from the human is in a different place. And humans are quite a big part of the security picture. Um, so you obviously need to think about those risks slightly differently. One of those being the sort of the air gap between the humans and the asset now. Obviously, you've got sort of the communications issues, but you've also got things like the physical security of the asset and making sure you know where it is and whether it's being tampered with. Historically, obviously, humans would know about that because they're on board. But if they're sort of removed from the system, then you need to do those things in different ways. Um, You've also got the fact that humans are really great at complex task handling. So if an unexpected security incident or anything occurs, then humans are really great at dealing with that. So those edge cases are really easily dealt with by humans and human brains. So as soon as you take the human off the system has to deal with that themselves. And the humans have less control over what's happening. And so the asset itself needs to deal with security differently to how you have before. There are other things coming in, such as multi-role vessels. We're seeing a lot of vessels where you've got one vessel architecture with maybe you can have different payloads for different operations, or even sort of the same vessel being used for different the same capability being used in different ways. So, for example, you might have an underwater vehicle that can survey the seabed, and that might be used for either a scientific survey or it might be used to survey some cables. And it might be that even though the vessel itself is the same, the level of risk you're looking at is different. The level of risk you're willing to accept in those two instances might be different, and therefore the security risks are different, and the measures you're having to take are different. So that's quite an interesting aspect of this.
It is definitely. And Simon, so building on that, what are some of the key security risks and vulnerabilities?
So I think it's important, first of all, just to know that the vulnerabilities are the same as for any other systems. But I think the important bit, the point that Chloe made, is it's the business context. The business context is how you put your controls in place to manage those what turn into risks as opposed to from those vulnerabilities. There's three or four that I'm really tracking. So we still have quite an immature regulatory environment. Understanding the true business impact is difficult when the sort of operating procedures, the concept of operations aren't mature yet, which means you end up having to put more controls in than maybe we'll do when we're a bit more mature. Technology is just moving forward so quickly. Like what is cutting edge today is legacy tomorrow. You're seeing the adoption of cloud services. You're seeing OT IT convergence. You're seeing new development methodologies within IT, and then finally, I think a point that Chloe picked up as well: AI. How can we use AI in this sector, particularly if I've taken the human completely out of the loop? How can I use AI to make decisions for me that previously those humans would have been making those complicated decisions? So they're the key bits that I'm tracking.
Some key challenges in there, clearly. So, what approaches can help us mitigate these risks?
So, so Security comes down to understanding your business context, understanding the business risk. So you'll see the National Cybersecurity Centre has a whole load of design principles, secure design principles. Absolutely, that's your starting point. Go and read the National Cybersecurity website. Their design principles really are start there, and you won't go too far wrong. You've got to figure out how you're going to do your respond. How are you going to respond to an incident in this autonomous world? And they're probably the key bits for me.
Okay.
Good design and
Yeah.
understand context.
Okay. So, in the context of perhaps a system of systems where you have a number of uncrewed assets working together, um, you mentioned OT and IT convergence. If you could briefly explain what operational technology is and how that's important in a context where you have a disparate systems?
So operational technologies is increasingly being recognised for its value. A lot of the data that you want to make your business decisions on resides on your operational technology. So the operational technology is your engines, it's your pumps, it's your sensors, it's the stuff that doesn't look like a Windows laptop. Um, that has massive business value to it. So we need to start understanding that. There's also this convergence. So we're now seeing the two are coming together. Traditionally, they've been two completely separate things. Now they're converging. You'll see what they call cloud hosted OT. Well, that doesn't really make sense. OT hosted on IT. So you're seeing that these two are coming together. Massive benefits, really big benefits, but we're just going to have to make sure that we've got the security controls that we use for traditional cloud services and also applying those into our OT space.
Yeah. Chloe, when we're talking about underwater systems, does this make it easier from a cybersecurity point of view, or actually does it create more challenges?
It's interesting. It's different when we sort of in the maritime. We look at the underwater, we look at the surface, and we look at air. Like you've mentioned with the autonomous systems, a lot of the time you're using multiple assets together to achieve your goals, achieve your objectives. So those three different sort of domains are quite different. Underwater, it's quite difficult to talk to these systems, but they're also sort of hard to get in touch with by maybe threat actors. So it's just a completely different challenge to when you're on the surface and the communications are much easier, and again in the air. So it's just a whole different world underwater.
So how can we assure the security of these assets in a way that's robust enough, but also cost effective?
So when you think about assurance, we tend to think about regulation. Simon mentioned the fact that the regulation in this space is quite immature. So we've got developing regulations, and they are coming, and the regulators are working quite heavily with industry because we've got quite an interesting thing happening where the technology is moving so fast, and people are really wanting to reap the benefits of the technology, but the regulations take time. Takes a lot of time for them to be developed to work well for us, to work well for the industry. So as the sort of operational concepts develop, and in utilising uncrewed systems, there's such a vast array of different ways you can utilise them. And therefore, it's really quite difficult for regulators because it's not sort of one set use case. It's many use cases operating in different ways. The International Maritime Organization are developing their Maritime Autonomous Surface Ship Code, and that's developing some regulations, but that's not come in yet. And also from the drafts we've seen, it's quite high level, and so there's not too much of the specific guidance and frameworks that we can utilize. But as Simon said, there is other guidance we can utilize in this area, and just because it's new technology and we're using it in different ways doesn't mean that we can't utilize those cyber principles that are sort of well-founded and in good practice that we can utilize.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so a theme here is that's coming out is the pace of change of technology and how software is developing so quickly. AI is coming into machine learning. How can we ensure that we keep up with the pace of technology development?
So I think you have to embrace it. The danger if you don't embrace it is you end up on legacy technology that's got a workforce that is not the best, because the best people want to go and work on the most modern technology. I think the concepts of continuous integration and continuous deployment, CI/CD pipelines, as some people have heard them referenced to, are really important. And that's what allows you to patch from a security perspective, but also from a feature perspective. You want to push out a new bit of software, bang, straight done, all done in minutes. Previously, that would take weeks, months, even years to update. That allows you to really exploit it, because our users, they get it on their smartphones, they get it on their laptops, they expect to see it at work. So we have to make sure that we track those sorts of principal approaches to developing and exploiting technology. Really important.
One aspect of all of this new technology is that if you're looking to bring in autonomous operations into something that you've done traditionally with humans, then it's a brand new way of working. And therefore, if you're right at that beginning of that process in developing your new concept of operations, then you can start thinking about security right from the start, which is a benefit. A lot of the time, we see that security isn't thought about from the beginning of a design. And so being able to do that now is really beneficial, and it means you can use those like secure by design principles, and consider security throughout the process right from the very start.
Yeah, that sounds like a very sensible approach. A final question from me then. We've talked about how, uncrewed systems, obviously we're removing humans from the immediate platform. How do you think, with the technology moving so fast, how do we ensure that the human element there is also keeping up with the pace of change? So in terms of humans may be sometimes the cause of a cybersecurity issue, but then they're also there to deal with it once it's unfolding. If we're on a vessel that hasn't got people on board, how is the human element being kind of handled in that situation?
I think it goes back to what I was just saying about how you need to, if you're thinking about it from the very start and you're thinking about sort of the whole concept of your operation and how you're designing what you're doing, you include the humans in that. And sometimes it's the training for humans, making sure you've got the right processes and procedures and governance in place so that people can act as you want them to in the right way. And you've also got sort of, this is off topic, but the culture side. Sometimes you need to change the culture quite a bit to implement autonomy in your operations, and that can be quite a big challenge. So it's quite a step change, I think.
The whole design it in from the start is a people, process, technology, data problem, that all four of those need to be thought of upfront and through life. And if you do that, then you're going to get your optimal outcomes. And the key to that is security controls normally limit usability of your systems. So you want to have as few as possible security controls, but still manage to meet your risk appetite, because that maximizes the sort of business value that asset can deliver you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, Chloe, so we've covered quite a few challenges there and lots of complexity. Where do you see the future going with this? Clearly there's ways we can improve the situation, improve on the situation now. How do you see that paying out in the future?
Yeah, we've talked about sort of the challenges in the business context, and it is something we need to sort of give the right focus to. But at the same time, we've talked about there being guidance out there, and this absolutely is solvable. It's just something we need to give the right attention and focus to.
Excellent. Well, it's been really brilliant talking to you. I think just to sum up then, I think the understanding the concept of operations around how you're operating the new uncrewed or autonomous systems, and then understanding that the whole system and how the different elements of technology and people fit together and work together, but crucially designing that in as a whole life process from start to finish. I think sounds like it's absolutely key to this. Okay, so it's been brilliant talking to you today. Thank you very much, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Will.
Thank you, Will.